So you're ready to dive into the Bible,
Okay.
but maybe feeling a little intimidated, like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops?
Yeah.
Don't worry. We've got you covered.
Yeah.
We're doing a deep dive today into an article from Bible Gateway News and Knowledge.
Okay.
Think of it as your trusted Sherpa guide to help you navigate this epic book.
That feeling of being overwhelmed is really common. I mean, the Bible is a vast and complex book, but that's
Yeah.
also what makes it so rewarding.
I think one of the things that makes people feel overwhelmed
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
there's this feeling that you have to read it from cover to cover,
Yes.
and that's it.
That's right.
And it's such a huge volume.
It is.
I mean, it's a journey, not a sprint.
Yeah. Think of it as a library.
Yeah.
Filled with history and poetry,
Yeah.
prophecy, and more.
And this deep dive, we're hoping, will help you figure out where to begin,
Yeah.
how to choose the right Bible for you,
Yes.
and then how to stay engaged without feeling lost in the wilderness of all those verses. So one of the first things I think people probably encounter is the sheer variety of Bible translations.
Yeah, that can be a bit overwhelming.
Like choosing a coffee,
It is.
French press, pour over
Yeah.
espresso. Each one has its own, flavor profile.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk translations.
Okay.
Um, I've heard these terms formal equivalence and functional equivalence, but honestly, they sound a bit like a foreign language to me.
Sure.
Can you kind of unpack those a little bit?
Absolutely. Imagine you're reading Shakespeare. Beautiful language,
Sure.
but you might need a dictionary every other line, right?
Yeah.
So that's similar to formal equivalence translations like the King James Version or the KJV. They try to stay as close as possible to the original Hebrew and Greek, word for word.
So the KJV is like the classic traditional roast of the Bible translations,
Uh-huh.
rich, complex, but maybe not the easiest to digest for, like a newbie like me.
Exactly. And while there's nothing wrong with appreciating the beauty of the KJV,
Right.
a more modern English version like the New King James Version or
Yeah.
NKJV
Okay.
might be a smoother starting point. It keeps that formal equivalence approach, but updates the language.
So it's a little easier to understand.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. So then what's functional equivalence all about?
Think of it like this. A friend telling you a story, clear, engaging, and easy to follow.
Right.
So functional equivalence translations, like the New International Version or NIV,
Very.
they prioritize conveying the original meaning in a way that feels natural and understandable to modern readers.
So the NIV is like the best-selling novel
It is.
of the Bible translations.
Exactly.
It's all about clear storytelling and making those complex ideas relatable.
Huh?
And you mentioned that's very popular.
Extremely popular.
Yeah.
The NIV strikes a balance between accuracy and readability, making it a great option for both beginners and seasoned readers.
Okay, so what about other options?
Sure.
I mean, there's so many translations out there.
There are a lot.
So besides the NIV, what are we looking at?
Well, you've got translations like the Christian Standard Bible, or CSB, rooted in the Southern Baptist tradition. It leans towards word-for-word accuracy while still aiming for clarity in modern English.
Gotcha. So different translations for different folks.
Yes.
What about our Catholic and Orthodox listeners?
Yeah,
Are there specific translations they should know about?
definitely. So if the deuterocanonical books, also known as the Apocrypha, are important to you,
Right.
you'll want to look for Bibles that include them. Some Catholic Bibles, for example, will include these books.
Okay, that's really helpful. So it's like choosing the right travel guide for your specific destination.
Yes.
But hold on, once we've figured out our preferred translation,
Right.
aren't we then faced with this whole wall of different physical Bibles?
You are.
How do we navigate that?
It can be a little bit overwhelming, like
Yeah.
walking into a massive bookstore and not knowing where to start.
It's true, and let's be honest, it's tempting to become a Bible maximalist and want to collect them all. Right. It's like those beautiful special edition books that come out, you just want them all on your shelf.
Uh-huh.
But realistically, what are the different types of Bibles that we might encounter, and how do we know which one we actually need?
Well, you have your standard Bibles,
Okay.
your thin line Bibles for easy carrying,
Okay.
compact pocket Bibles,
Mm-hmm.
large print Bibles, premium editions with fancy covers,
Yep.
and high quality paper. But beyond that, you get into the more specialized types.
Like study Bibles.
Yeah. Study Bibles can be game changers, especially for new readers.
They sound intriguing, yeah.
It's like having a built-in Bible scholar right there with you.
So it's like having those pop-up information bubbles you find in, a museum exhibit.
Yes.
You're reading about a historical event, and boom, there's a map.
Right?
Or a timeline or a cultural insight right there to help you understand the context.
Exactly. Think of them as a mini seminary in book form. They provide context,
Oh, wow.
explanations, historical background, and even different interpretations of passages. And they can really help answer those wait, what moments that you might have when you're reading on your own.
Okay, I'm sold.
Good.
But with so many study Bibles out there, how do I choose the right one for me, especially as a beginner?
There are some great options specifically designed for new readers. You've got your version-specific study Bibles that go deep on a particular translation.
Well,
Beginner-focused editions that use clear language and avoid overwhelming jargon.
okay.
Practical application Bibles that help you connect the text to your everyday life.
So it's kind of like choosing a cookbook based on your skill level and what you want to make.
Right.
If you're like a novice cook, you don't need the Michelin star chef's guide to molecular gastronomy.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And then for people that like structure and guidance, there are also daily reading Bibles.
There are that break down the text into manageable chunks.
Okay, that sounds like a good segue into our next topic of reading plans and setting goals.
Yeah,
Because choosing a Bible is just the first step,
it is.
right?
Right.
Actually reading it consistently is a whole other challenge.
It is. It's like having a gym membership. Just because you have the card doesn't mean you're going to get those gains.
Ouch, that hits a little close to home.
I know.
Okay, so let's talk about actually developing a reading plan.
Uh-huh.
What are some different approaches that people take?
Sure. There are a few popular methods. So you could read canonically, starting with Genesis and going straight through to Revelation.
Okay.
It gives you a sense of the overall narrative arc of the Bible.
Okay, so that's like watching a TV series from episode 1 to the finale.
Right.
Right, you get the full story as it unfolds.
Exactly.
What are some other options?
Well, you could go chronologically, following the timeline of events as they happened historically.
Okay.
This can be quite interesting
Yeah.
because it weaves together the narratives of the Old and New Testaments.
So that's like watching like a documentary series that jumps back and forth in time to tell a story.
Uh-huh.
I like that. And what was that other approach you mentioned?
Oh, you could read concurrently,
Right.
tackling the Old and New Testaments side by side.
Okay, so like watching a movie with like two intertwined storylines happening simultaneously.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So different strokes for different folks. Now, what about setting a realistic pace? I've heard of these like year-long reading plans.
Yeah.
But that sounds really ambitious.
A year-long plan is popular, but there's also 2-year options if you prefer a slower pace.
Okay.
And one tip I like to share is to read one psalm a day.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's a great way to start or end your reading time with a moment of reflection and prayer.
Yeah,
Plus, the Psalms are full of emotional honesty and wisdom.
that's a great tip.
Hmm.
So we've got different reading approaches, tips for pacing ourselves. But how do we actually find these pre-made plans?
You can find them online in the back of some Bibles or through resources like Bible Gateway,
Okay.
which even offers email reminders to help you stay on track.
Oh, cool.
It's like having a personal Bible reading coach.
So it's like they're cheering you on. Awesome. So we've covered choosing a translation, finding the right physical Bible, and even developing a reading plan.
Yes.
But before we get too comfortable, there's something important we need to address.
Yeah, something that often gets overlooked
What's that?
is the fact that we're reading a translation.
Oh, good point.
It's not like the Bible fell from the sky written in perfect English.
Right.
Right. These texts were originally written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek
Oh.
centuries ago.
Okay, mind blown.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like watching a foreign film with subtitles.
Uh-huh.
The translation can impact how we understand, like, the nuances of the story.
Exactly. And that's why it's helpful to remember that no single translation is perfect.
Right.
Each one makes choices about how to best convey the meaning in another language.
That's true.
So if you encounter a passage that feels confusing or doesn't quite sit right with you, don't be afraid to compare it to another translation. You might find that a different wording helps clarify things.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that can impact our understanding, all those chapter and verse numbers that we're so used to seeing,
Yeah.
were those always there?
You might be surprised to learn that they're a relatively recent addition.
Really?
They weren't originally part of the biblical texts. They were added centuries later to make it easier to reference specific passages.
Wait, seriously. So somebody just decided to chop up these ancient texts like a pizza.
They did.
But how does that impact how we read the Bible today?
It's a great question. Those chapter and verse divisions can be helpful for navigating the text,
Sure.
but they can also inadvertently shape how we understand it.
Oh, interesting.
It's like reading a novel where somebody added chapter titles and summaries centuries later, you know?
Yeah.
Those additions, even if well-intentioned, can influence our interpretation.
Oh, so we need to be aware of those potential biases.
Oh, do you?
Those seemingly harmless little numbers can actually have like a subtle impact on our reading.
They can.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a concept called paratext, which refers to all the extra stuff surrounding the main text.
Okay.
Things like chapter and verse numbers,
What?
titles,
Okay.
footnotes, introductions,
Gotcha.
even the physical layout of the page.
Huh.
They all contribute to our reading experience.
So it's like the packaging of the product can influence our perception before we've even engaged with the content itself.
Exactly.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
But hold on, we're starting to get into some pretty deep waters here.
We are.
We are.
And that's where we'll pick up after a quick break.
Right.
We'll dive into the fascinating world of biblical interpretation, exploring how different readers, different eras, and even those little chapter and verse numbers can shape how we understand these ancient texts.
Sounds good.
So don't go anywhere.
We'll be right back. Okay, so before the break,
Yes.
we were talking about paratext
Uh-huh.
and how even like little chapter and verse numbers can subtly influence
They can.
how we understand the Bible.
Yes.
It's a bit like realizing that the stage lighting can change how we experience a play, right?
That's a great analogy. And it highlights the importance of being aware of those external factors that can shape our perception. So as we dive deeper into this world of biblical interpretation,
Right.
we encounter this concept called hermeneutics.
Hermeneutics.
It sounds intimidating.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to need to break that down for me.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like something you study in a seminary.
Right.
Not something that you, like, chat about over coffee.
Think of it this way. How do we bridge the gap between these ancient texts written thousands of years ago
Right.
and our modern understanding? Hermeneutics helps us navigate that journey.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that different readers coming from different backgrounds and different eras might interpret the same passage in different ways.
So it's not just about what the text says, but who's reading it
Exactly.
and the lens that they're bringing to the table.
It's like looking at a painting, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
One person might see joy, another might see sadness, and both interpretations can be valid based on their own experiences and perspectives.
There's no one right way to interpret the Bible.
Well, there are certainly principles and guidelines that can help us interpret the text faithfully and responsibly.
Right.
But acknowledging the role of hermeneutics
Mm-hmm.
helps us approach the Bible with humility, recognizing that we're always on a journey of understanding.
That's actually quite liberating, isn't it?
It is.
It takes the pressure off having to have all the answers right away.
It does.
So knowing all this, all these different translations, the potential biases of paratext, the complexities of interpretation, how do we actually approach reading the Bible in a way that's both meaningful and manageable?
Well, first and foremost, don't get discouraged.
Okay.
The Bible is a vast and complex book.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey of discovery. It's like training for a marathon, you know? You wouldn't try to run 26 miles on your first day.
Right, you'd start small.
You would. You'd find your rhythm, gradually increase your distance.
So it's okay to take baby steps to pace ourselves and not feel overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the text.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's good, because I know, like, sometimes I get bogged down in, like, those long lists of names and genealogies, all those begats and whatnot.
Yeah.
Feels like you're reading a phone book from ancient times.
And remember, not every passage will resonate with you
Right.
at every moment in your life. That's the beauty of the Bible. It's a living text that speaks to us in different ways
That's true.
throughout our journeys.
It's like how our taste in music evolves over time.
Yes.
Songs that we loved as teenagers might not hit the same way when we're adults.
That's right.
Now, one technique that I find helpful for engaging with the text is note-taking.
Yes, me too.
I'm a big note-taker, so I love that suggestion. But what's the best way to take notes while reading the Bible? Do we need, like, special notebooks or highlighters? What do we do?
Whatever works for you. So some people love journaling Bibles
Okay.
with wide margins for writing. Others prefer separate notebooks
Right.
where they can jot down their thoughts and reflections.
Yeah.
And of course, there are all those fantastic Bible apps
Mm.
that allow you to highlight,
Yes.
bookmark, and add digital notes.
I love those.
Yeah, they're pretty great.
It's all about finding what works best for you.
It is.
Some people find that writing things down by hand
Right?
helps them better absorb and remember the information,
Exactly.
while others prefer the flexibility and searchability of digital notes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say I'm reading along
Okay.
dutifully taking my notes,
Yes.
and I stumble across a passage that just leaves me utterly baffled.
Sure.
What do I do?
First of all, know that you're not alone.
Okay.
The Bible is full of challenging passages that have puzzled readers for centuries,
Right.
so don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Oh,
Talk to a pastor, join a Bible study group, or even explore commentaries
hmm.
and other resources that offer different perspectives.
I love that idea of joining a Bible study group. It's like having a book club, but for the most important book ever written.
Exactly.
And speaking of community, you also mentioned talking to a pastor if you're struggling with a passage.
Yes,
It's like having a personal tutor for the Bible.
it is.
Okay, so I've tried all that.
Okay.
I've read different translations, taken notes, joined a Bible study, talked to my pastor.
Uh-huh.
I'm still feeling stuck. Are there any other options?
Sometimes it's helpful to take a break from traditional reading and explore the Bible in different ways.
Okay.
So you could try listening to an audio Bible,
Right.
watching a Bible-based movie or documentary,
Oh, interesting.
or even exploring, believe it or not, Bible-based games or apps.
Like Bible-based games, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah,
Are we talking like trivia games or something more interactive?
there are all sorts of options out there, from trivia games that test your knowledge of Scripture
Right.
to interactive adventures that help you experience the stories in a more immersive way. You might be surprised at how much you can learn while having fun.
I love that. It's about making the Bible come alive,
Yeah,
not just keeping it confined to like the pages of a book.
exactly.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
any final words of wisdom for our listeners as they embark on their own Bible reading adventures?
My final thought is this. The Bible is a gift.
Mm.
It's a treasure trove of wisdom, guidance, and inspiration
Yes,
that has the power to transform our lives.
it can.
Don't be afraid to dive in, explore, and discover all that it has to offer. You might be surprised at what you find.
Absolutely. You know what? That was such a great point about the Bible being a gift.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I get so caught up in like all the logistics of reading it,
Yep.
which version, which plan, how to take notes,
Uh-huh.
that I forget to just enjoy the process of like discovery.
It's easy to get lost in those details.
Yeah.
But at its heart, the Bible is a story about love, hope, and redemption. And we get to be part of that unfolding narrative.
That's beautiful.
It is.
So before we wrap up this deep dive on how to read the Bible,
Okay.
let's circle back to that article from Bible Gateway.
Sure.
What are some of the key takeaways that really resonated with you?
Well, for me, the biggest takeaway was that sense of encouragement.
Yeah.
The article does a great job of reminding us that it's okay to be a beginner,
Yeah.
to have questions, to not have all the answers.
Right.
It's a journey and not a destination.
I love that.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off feeling like we need to become like Bible scholars overnight.
We don't.
Right.
No.
What else stood out to you?
The emphasis on finding what works for you,
Mm-hmm.
there's no one right way to read the Bible.
Right.
Whether you prefer a traditional print Bible or a digital app, whether you like to read solo or in a group, the key is to find what helps you connect with the text.
Right. It's about making it personal, not just following like a set of rules. I also really appreciated the advice about taking notes and actually engaging with the text.
Yeah, that's important.
Whether that's through journaling, highlighting, or using those cool digital tools that we talked about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Those tools can be incredibly helpful for deepening our understanding. And let's not forget the power of community,
Oh, yeah.
talking to a pastor,
Yeah.
joining a Bible study group, or even just discussing your thoughts with a friend
Right.
can open up new perspectives.
Yeah, it's like having a travel buddy on a road trip,
It is.
right?
It is.
Sharing the journey makes it more enjoyable and memorable.
Absolutely.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are some of the things that stood out to you from our conversation today?
Honestly, the idea that even scholars debate the meaning of certain passages is both comforting and exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It means there's always more to learn. And it's
Yeah.
okay to wrestle with the text and ask questions.
And that's a journey we can take together.
Think that's-
So to our listeners, here's a final thought to ponder. What parts of the Bible have always intrigued or puzzled you? Which translation style feels most accessible? Consider sharing your journey with a friend or a pastor, or even start your own Bible study group. I think that would be amazing.
I do too.
The Bible is a gift that keeps on giving.
It does.
Happy reading.
Happy reading.